Okay, welcome. This is an overview of the doors that we at Cerelan built for Epsilon, the game. And in the title, I mentioned that kind of treating doors as AI. And I'm going to get into how we built these doors. They were built, aside from the art, obviously, they're built completely in blueprints. And because Epsilon is a tactical shooter, the doors have to be quite robust. There's a lot of different elements to them and a lot of different things that they need to do. So you can see this is our door test map, and you can see every iteration of door that we have in the game, um, which, as you can see, is quite a lot. And the interesting thing about these doors is they're one file. They're one door blueprint that contains all of these variations. And so the level artists need only drop the one door blueprint into the level, set a variety of options. So you can see here in our default options, we've got locked, flipped, open, no lock, reverse slide, random lock, what floor it's on, do you display the text? Um, I don't know what that means. Um, and then there are some lots of various other elements um, that contains information about um, the squad interacting with the door, the points that they need to move to, delay times in breaching. We've got whether it's mirrored. Um, but all these options, the great thing is there's one door blueprint that the artist just drops in that one blueprint into their level, places it, chooses the various different options of how it's oriented, and they're done. So all of the heavy lifting is done by the construction script and the door blueprint. So one decision that we did make early on for Epsilon is that the doors would be slider doors. These were actually inspired by the underground development building slash bunker that Microsoft built to develop the HoloLens. When I visited that structure before HoloLens was announced to get their demo, they have very tight hallways because it was built in a bunker underneath their visitor center. So they couldn't have traditional doors because the hallways are only like they're really tight. So they couldn't have doors that opened out and they couldn't have doors that open in because the rooms are also very small and they needed every foot possible to interact with the HoloLens. So they built these sliding kind of garagey style doors. And we chose that for a specific reason. On our past title, we had a lot of problems with door collision, and opening and closing doors, colliding with characters, and characters getting stuck on them, or characters getting pushed by them. And so the great thing about this sliding style door, while it is a small restriction on the level design as far as where the environment artists can place them and how much room they need on each side of them, we don't have any of those problems with player collision. There's still issues, if you kill a dude in the doorway and then close it on him on purpose. There's some of those issues, but here you can see. Let's go ahead and open one of these up. Okay, so first, let's take a look at the viewport and the objects that are kind of part of this door. Um, the first thing you've got is obviously the door frame itself, the door object. And if I scroll down over here, you can see the actual, that's the door mesh. We've got a lock mesh. We've got our breaching charge, two of them, one on each side. We've got our UI icon, which if you watch my previous video on using the level to build UI in Unreal, you'll kind of see what that's used for. That's actually used for the planning map and is teleported to the appropriate location that lives in the level. You've got audio attached to the door. You've got an explosion effect for the breaching charge. Um, Actually, that's the explosion effect. And then you've got cameras. The cameras themselves are used for the OptiWand underneath the door. So that's actually attached to the door. So to the player, it looks like they're looking under the door. What they're actually doing, what's actually happening is we teleport the player's view to these cameras. Um, we've got our uh, volumes for keeping track of where the player is in relation to the door, so that the door knows which side the player is on when the player goes to interact with it, whether it's through breaching charges or for interacting with the cameras, um, and some various other objects. This is the lockbox. This is how the player unlocks the door by looking at this box. And then we have these move points, and they're actually by default, because this is a default blueprint, they're kind of just sitting in the middle. Um, oh, I'm sorry. The door move to point is the is the indicator showing that the player has ordered his team to move to the door. The AI components here, which are all stacked on top of each other in the default, are the locations for the squad mates to both stack up on the door, breach the door, and where they should be focused while they're doing that breaching. So you can see there's quite a few of those here in the upper left. Um, what that's used for is you can order your team to stack up on the door. They'll go to the certain locations, and then when they breach, they'll move to set locations on the other side of the door, and those can be a set on a per door basis. So that allows you to deal with things like if the level artist wants to put, say, a potted plant right here on the other side of the door, you can change their breach locations on a specific door basis so that they look good going through. So while it looks like the AI is the squad AI is actually moving as a team through the door, it's actually the door giving the squad those instructions. So the door is telling the AI where they need to go when they're stacked up and breaching that door. Um, the door also keeps track of who's in it, who's not in it. It opens itself when an NPC, an AI, tries to move through it, um, and all sorts of things like that. So let's take a look at the construction script, which is this is where we basically allow the artist to use a lot of these variables um, to interact with the door once they place it. So up here, I'll just kind of go down the list. This is the door floor UI location. So when the level artist places the level into or places the door into the level, they just choose this variable, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. It defaults to 1, and this is where it sets its location on the planning map. To the player, it looks like one kind of map in a UI, presentation. In actuality, it's 4 different uh, 3D models of the level spaced at different negative y-axis in the actual level. So this is where it knows where it's going to be in the level so that it can teleport its icon to the correct location. And again, this is all done in the construction script. The level artist doesn't have to worry about it. All they have to do is set the variable. And that's kind of the point of everything we do here. This is checking to see if it's a door without a lock. Um, if it doesn't have a lock, it hides the lock mesh, so there's no lock. Um, and then it checks to see if it's supposed to be locked. The artist can also set it as randomly be locked, which is another variation. And then we have mirrored, which is left and right orientation, and flipped, which is which way it's going to slide. So the artist can flip it around, have it slide left or right based on what they want. And it obviously is a little bit complicated because you have that combination of you have mirrored and flipped. Um, and then This also sets the location of the breaching charge when the breaching charge is placed, because from the player's perspective, what the player's doing is actually placing a breaching charge on the door and then setting it off. What's actually happened is the breaching charge mesh sound and the object itself actually lives on the door, and then the door keeps track of its input and unhides the breaching charge, and then when the breaching charge is detonated, plays the effect and the sound and opens the door and does all that. Um, let's get into the event graph because that's where the real fun happens. As you can see, um, this is a large blueprint script. There's a lot of work here and probably not the best organized. One interesting thing, just again coming from the top, the doors actually keep track of how many breaching charges the player has and speaks to the UI widget and the, the pawn to let it know when the player's out of breaching charges. So that's another thing that we actually keep track of the doors. And the doors also speak to each other and tell each other when the player's out of breaching charges, so he can't breach anymore. This is the logic for breaching the door. So again, like I mentioned, this um, keeps track of the breaching charges, whether the player has any more breaching charges. It hides and unhides. It plays the audio. It blows open the door, and then you can see here it just opens the door after the door is in. Um, this is the unlock placeholder. This is for unlocking the door. Obviously, didn't end up being a placeholder. So this is when the player goes to a locked door, and they activate the unlock command. It allows the player to unlock the door. This is the blueprint for the OptiSnake. Um, Basically, it sets the player in cinematic mode. It moves the player's camera to those cameras that are placed into the object, and then it allows the player to rotate that camera in that view. And it actually has the movement commands set in the camera itself for moving the camera around. And it keeps track of which camera the player is controlling, and it rotates them as the player puts that input in. Open and close is probably the most straightforward thing in here. This is just a matinee that plays when you open and close the door, but of course it needs to keep track of a lot of the various states of the door, because not only do we have just open and close, but we have mouse rollover open and closing, which is this part of the blueprint here, where it's tracking the mouse wheel up, and we have to keep track of where the door is, whether it's open, whether it's closed, whether it's partially open, whether it's partially closed, what position is it at. Um, Also, one fun thing was we had to make a decision. If you mouse wheel open the door partially and then give an open and close command, what happens? What we decided on for right now, unless we get any negative feedback to it, is if the door is less than halfway open when you hit the open and close button, the door will open. If it is, no, wait, no, if it's less than halfway open, it'll close. If it's more than halfway open, it will open, which obviously puts it into an open or closed state, which is a Boolean, versus the partially open state, which is this all this logic. This is just randomly locked door. If set, we decided to do this in the event graph off of begin play rather than off of the construction script, just because that construction script takes place all at once. And so by having this go off of begin play, the construction script runs first, and then the random lock door is set. The other thing that we've done in the construction script is that like we don't allow you to put in conflicting booleans. So you can't say it's random locked and locked, and the construction script will actually change those booleans based on what the level artist does. And the idea there was, again, if you get a level artist possibly that doesn't understand what the various different things do, it's set up in the blueprint script to prevent them from putting in conflicting booleans into the settings. Over here, this is doing, I don't know what this is doing. Oh, this is doing setting various booleans uh, for the logic on opening and closing, what direction it's going to open and close. And this is the widget for unlocking the door. This lives in this blueprint as well. Even though the widget for unlocking the door and doing various different actions in the game, like pressing a breaching charge and things like that, we've got this progress bar. It looks to the player to be consistent throughout, whether he's securing a hostage or securing a surrendered enemy or unlocking a door, placing a breaching charge. The logic for actually creating, adding it, and playing the animation actually lives within the door as well. This is the UI location I talked to earlier. You can see it's getting the floor modifier based on, well, world location area of interest is at the root. So it's basically getting its root or the center of the object um, and then moving the UI icon to the map. Here we have the AI bots moving to the door. And can react is an AI state. We have certain AI that are set to not basically respond to sounds. Most AI by default will react to sounds and track down the player or go to where the sound emanated from. But we have certain AI like guards that are not allowed to basically leave. So we ignore those and then we open the door for the for those AI. Here's where it's basically listening for the player, and that goes back to the viewport where we had these volumes, and that's what's basically when the player enters these volumes, and these can be tweaked on a door-to-door basis if need be. Although I don't think we've had to. When the player enters those volumes, the door starts essentially listening for the player's input. Um, so the door, instead of the player putting out input, the door is actively sitting there listening for input. And since the player can only ever be in one door volume at a time, or any one player can only be in any one door volume at a time, it's all based on an input event. So, it's not all doors are constantly sitting there, checking for input. It's basically when the player comes into that volume, it enables input to that door, and so it's a little bit cheaper on your CPU. You're not having, especially with a tactical shooter where you might have, 40, 50 doors in your level all sitting there, trying to wait for input. It's a little bit cheaper way to do it. These are just our UI tips of displaying help text. Come up to the first door, it gives you UI tips, and then it won't do it after that. And so that is the door blueprint in Epsilon. And that is not even keeping track of our event dispatchers that live in the door. We've got, obviously the breaching that I talked about, keeping track of the player. We've got doors opening that's casting to AI. We've got a security system where you can unlock all the doors, whether it's being stacked by the squad so it can talk to the squad. Is there AI there? We also keep track of all the doors in the level, so we're going to add each one of these to an array that we react to. So there is a lot of information stored in something that's all over the place, but because the way we set it up, it's not sucking a lot of resources having all of these essentially AI sitting around waiting for this input. And then the other key part is just that, the impact on the level artist to placing one of these, choosing its orientation, setting whether it's locked, whether it's random locked, is very minimal. It's very easy. The main work is in customizing the squad move to locations and where they stack up and where they move to and where they're focused on when they're moving to those locations. And that's pretty much done by design. And it's not real hard once you drop them in because, like I said, all those volumes are stacked on top of each other right here. And once you place it into the level, you can just move those objects around based on your relative factors. Also, the volumes that you see here around the doors, those are noise generation when they open or when they're breached. So you can affect that if you want on a per door basis to affect how far the door volume carries to the AI. So if you have a door that's in a big open area, you can make the sound of the breach charge and the sound of the door opening itself, opening and closing. I'll just show you, we can adjust that. Yeah, that's I'm moving these points around. You can adjust that the size of that volume that that sound travels, essentially, even though it's not actually sound traveling. It's just calling out to any AI within its radius to come check it out. You can adjust that on a per case by case basis. So as you can see, we have quite a few different varieties of doors. And the other neat thing about this is if we do want to create a new visual style of door, then we just make a child of this actor and then just replace the static meshes. And we've actually done that for one of our other levels that had a different visual style. It still all functioned the same. Breaching charges, locks, all that was the same, but just, kind of some different textures and some different geometry. But it's just a child of this blueprint that has just different static mesh actors swapped out. So that is an overview of some pretty cool things that you can do with blueprints. Like I said, all this was done in Blueprint, and this is stuff a designer can do. They can control exactly how they want the door to work, control of the stuff. The only thing that wasn't done here in design was the art and the actual matinee of the door moving back and forth because I'm terrible at matinees. So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that. I hope this might inspire some other Unreal 4 blueprint scripters to do some cool stuff with environment and interaction. And an example of how you can have an object in the game instead of putting information and things to do into your AI, you can put that into the object. And the object can give the AI the information that they can use to look cool, doing something like door breaching, which can be incredibly difficult to look right and look cool and work. Um, the door passes the information to the squad, and so when the squad goes through, each door is completely different in how they breach and how they move, because the door gives them that information instead of having a singular object where the AI might breach a certain way every single time so that they can always successfully do it. You're not locking your level artists in to not be able to put a door in a corner or a door, some things around the door or a table in the middle of the room because it would get in the way of the squad or anything like that. All your team needs to do is make sure that those breach objects are placed in the right place. They're on the nav mesh, all that kind of stuff. And the squad will look good doing it. So, okay, this has been another video on some cool stuff that we've done in Unreal. So, thanks very much. Oh, right. Yeah, I'm supposed to promote the game too. So if you like tactical shooters, come to www.Serellan, that's Serellan.com. That's our website. You can follow us on Epsilon, the game on Twitter, Serellan on Facebook. I'm Christian Allen. I'm at Serellan on Twitter. And you can come to our forums, serellan.com/forums. Come to our forums on Steam, just search Epsilon. Check out the game. It's currently $7.99 in early access, but that price is going to go up as we add additional content, so you can get in early. You can let us know what you think. Let us know if you want additional interaction with doors. What other kind of things do you want to see in a tactical shooter? Check us out. Let us know. Follow us, tweet us, do all that social media stuff so that we can get coverage and people will buy the game and we can bring you more tactical goodness. All right. Thanks very much. Take it easy.